So basically, when you look at the data, it's pretty clean at this point. There's a little bit that we're going to work through together. But basically, you can see we've got how much time was on the scoreboard, what quarter it was, what was the down and distance, who had the ball, where the ball was on the field, and then basically a description of every play. So with that, I decided, and then this was really, so if I keep scrolling over, this was really the column that I was kind of interested in doing analysis on, which is win probability. So what are the chances that the Eagles win the game based on everything that's happened up until this point in the game?
Where did you scrape the data from to get that?
I forget what the website's called. I have it on my let me open this up. So basically, the end result was I created this dashboard here. The data comes from Numberfire. Numberfire. So it's a cool website. But basically what I did was I created a pretty simple line graph, which we're going to recreate today, that looks at the change of the win probability throughout the course of the game. And there's a horizontal line here at 50%, which basically means the game could go either way, like it's 50-50. Anytime it's above there, it means it's favorable for the Eagles, that the Eagles are more likely to win. And then I just called out some of the major events using a key up here. So any big circle is a touchdown. Green is for Eagles, and then blue I went with Patriots.
A score or touchdown?
A touchdown, yeah. And then as small as that is a field goal. And then basically, so we're going to work on creating this line graph again today. We'll probably leave the annotations off for the time's sake, but I can show you guys how to annotate a line graph as well. And then we're going to focus on the bottom right. The bottom left is basically looks at individual plays. So basically it looks at the plays that cause the biggest jumps. So what are the most influential plays, both positive jumps and negative jumps over time. But kind of the neat thing that is fun is, since it's a dashboard and it can be interactive, I made it so that when you hover over different points, basically the scoreboard over here updates. So you can see basically at this point right here, there's 2 minutes and 55 seconds left in the second quarter. The Patriots had the ball. The score is 15-6. And on this play, it was second down and 10 on the 31. And, Brady completed a pass there. So if we hover over a point like this, which I have the annotation calling out as well, that was the Philly special play where it was the end-around pass from the tight end to Nick Foles for the touchdown. So you can see that was 4th and 1 right before the halftime. So basically what our goal for today is we're going to recreate this line graph, show you some tricks using a dual axis, and also a couple of different coloring tricks so that you can color using different dimensions and size things accordingly. And then we're going to put together this scoreboard and create the action that hovers over and it changes the scoreboard as we go. Cool?
Yes.
So hopefully you have a blank workbook. For the sake of time, I sent you the workbook with the data connected as well. Say that again?
Just check, make sure it's recording.
Yeah, you got a dot here.
Okay. Does it mean anything? No. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Good. So for the sake of time, what I did was I connected the data and I actually pre-populated some of the calculations that we're going to use. We're going to step through the calculations together, but rather than having everyone have to key in and type in the calculations, I figured it would be easier as a way of getting started. I guess before we get too far into a show of hands, like how many people would say they're beginners at Tableau?
Me, Eric.
Intermediate and advanced. Okay, so few advanced, few intermediate, but mostly beginners. So then we'll take things slow. If we don't get to everything, the whole dashboard's available to be downloaded online. If you have questions or you need me to slow down, let me know. Because this is your time, so feel free to ask questions. Are people with me right now? So basically, if you open the dashboard, I colored out a couple of these, or I just lined up a couple blank worksheets that we're going to be using. So we're going to start on this win probability line graph. So people go to that line graph. If you want to follow along and do it yourself, that's fine. If you also just want to sit back and watch, that's cool too. Whatever helps you guys learn the best. So and I forgot to call out, so I'll just call out now. There's an index in my data here. It's just called path. Each row gets a different path, and we're going to use that to kind of create our x-axis on the data. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to take path and we're going to drag it onto our shelf. And right now it is getting picked up as a dimension. So it's laying out each one. It's a blue pill. We actually want this to be a continuous measure because we're going to use it for a line graph. So if we just right click on it and change it from discrete to continuous, now we've got one dot for basically each play in the game. Cool. And then basically what we want to do is we're basically creating a scatter plot, right? So each point going across the x-axis and then the y-axis is basically going to be that win probability. So if you remember in the dashboard, we had win probability for the game. The problem with that is the way that the raw data came with it is it looked at whatever team had the ball and they told you that team's win probability. The problem with that is if we plot just that data, it's going to always be jumping up and down depending on who has the ball at that current time. So we kind of want to standardize the data and always make it the win probability for the Eagles. So with that in mind, what I said was, and we're going to forget about this and statement for a second. We're going to say if the team equals Philadelphia, then we want the win probability because that's the win probability. Otherwise, we want to take the win probability -1 because otherwise it's the Patriots ball, so it's showing the Patriots win probability. So we want to take the inverse of that because it's always going to add up to 100% for 1. So we're taking the opposite of that to get the Eagles win probability even when the Patriots have the ball, right? Because this team here is saying what team has the ball. So when the Eagles have the ball, just tell me their probability. But when they don't have the ball, tell me the opposite probability. Does that make sense? I'm seeing heads nod, so that's good. Okay. Now the one little trick in the middle here is if the description says kicks, I went through the data and I noticed anytime they kick off the ball, so after a touchdown or a field goal, if they're kicking off the ball, for some reason they still show it as the Eagles ball, but they show the Patriots probability. I don't know why, but it was making our line graph jump a little bit. So this is going to cover half of that, and then I'm going to show you again a second time that hopefully it makes sense when we plot the data. So we're going to say okay here, and that Eagles win probability is now the Eagles win probability for each point of the game. All I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to drag, and I'm going to say max win probability. So whatever the win probability was for that instance, if there ever happened to be 2 plays at the same time. So, for example, if there was a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, the clock would be exactly the same. So for that, we're just going to take the highest because that's the most recent. So that's why we're doing max. But basically what happens is we start to get a line graph. And you can see we're sort of looking right here, right around that 50 line point. But there are some interesting spikes down here that kind of look like that doesn't seem right, like what's going on here. So again, this has to deal with the kick. So just for the time being, I'm going to drag description into the tooltip so you guys can see. So again, this is a kickoff by Gostkowski. And I think what happened is my calculated field actually did again another kickoff. It didn't fix it perfectly. So what we're going to do, just for the sake of our data, is I'm going to show you how we can just exclude this. So if you just come, when the cancel out, if you come to description, which is the play description, and drag that to your filter, we're going to say that we're not going to look at kickoffs. And the reason we're not looking at kickoffs is kickoffs happen right after touchdowns, and the time doesn't change. So at the time of the touchdown and the time of the kickoff, your win probability should be the same. There's no change, simply kicking the ball up. So all you're going to do is you're going to come in here to the search, and we're going to say kicks. And basically that's going to show you all of these kickoffs. So you can see Gostkowski when he kicks off, and Jake Elliott, the Eagles kicker, when he kicks off. So after typing in kicks, everything's still unchecked, but I'm going to come here and I'm going to say check all. When you say check all, it only checks what's in the search. So it's not checking everything. It's only checking what's in the search. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to hit exclude. So basically this is going to exclude it from our data. And you're going to notice what happens is those dips drop away. So now we have a cleaner data set that really shows the win probability over time. Now, for something like this, since we're excluding it here, we want to exclude it everywhere. So what you can do is you can create a global filter. So simply by right-clicking on this and saying apply to what worksheets, you can apply to all only this worksheet. If we had multiple worksheets, you could say selected worksheets. So maybe I want to apply it to only the first 3 worksheets or something like that. But for this data source, we're going to say anything that uses this data source, we want to filter out those kickoffs. So we're going to say here, all using this data. This little like data cylinder is showing. This icon means that it's now a global data source. So basically, any worksheet now that we use will exclude those lines of data automatically. Does that make sense? People with me so far?
Could you tell me how did you get the max equals and
Yep. Yep, that's a good question. So if you can do it 2 different ways. So if I just drag normal, it'll default to sum like this.
Yeah.
You can come in here, right click on it, and change the measure from sum to max.
Yeah.
The other thing.
I got that, but the point is, I'm not getting that max equal attribute in my system. I mean, that WP equals attribute in my measures. How did you get that? That's my point.
Did you connect to the raw data separately, or did you open the desktop, the file that we sent, the TWBX file?
No, I opened it on my tab.
All right. We're going to keep, let me know if it's still a problem. We'll come back to it. So what we're going to do then is we're going to keep going. We're going to now create a dual axis graph. So right now we just have the line chart. And with a dual axis, we can put the different dots on it. So to create a dual axis graph, we're going to actually duplicate this line. So a quick trick in Tableau is if you hold down Control when you're moving any of these pills, it'll duplicate it. So if I hold down Control and I click on this max pill and I drag it to the right, you'll see there's a very small plus sign next to my cursor. That means it's going to duplicate it. So when I do that, I've now duplicated my line chart. So I have a line and then I have a second line. Cool?
Yes.
So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and basically when we did that, we now have our marks pane here. Our marks pane is where we can set up color, we can do size, we can put a label on, and we can control what shows up in the tooltip. We can now see we have 2 different marks, like sub-panes. So the first one here is a line graph, which is this corresponds to this one right here. And then the second one here is the second pill. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come here where it says automatic, and I'm going to change that to a circle. And basically what that does is it makes a plot. It's not connected anymore. It's going to be our dot that we use to change the size and the color to highlight the touchdowns and the field goals. Because there's obviously a lot that happens throughout a football game, right? But some of the bigger events are touchdowns and field goals. That's what scores points in a football game. There's other things that happen like turnovers or sacks or interceptions that we could have also chose to do, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to show when teams are scoring points. So to do that, we're going to use this field called touchdown/field goal. And I'm going to open it up, and we'll take a look at it. So in Tableau, you have a function called contains. Contains is basically a search, and it looks in a string. So we have a string called description, and that is the description of the play. So basically what I'm saying to do for Tableau to do is to see if the description contains the word touchdown. If it does, we're going to flag that as a TD. If it does not, we're going to say, all right, here's your second test. So your first test was touchdown. Your second test is, does description contain field goal? If it does, flag it as a field goal. Otherwise, we're just going to leave it null. We're going to leave it blank. So we're just going to end the statement. Now, the other thing that is helpful when you're working with, maybe semi-structured or unstructured or even structured data, I shouldn't even say that. Even if you're working with structured data, anytime someone's keying in data or data is coming from a system, there's a chance that your values are either typed in all capitals, all lowercase, or like proper, right? The first letter is capital and the rest is lowercase. You have to be careful with Tableau's contains because it looks for whatever you put in quotes to match exactly case sensitive. So by wrapping these descriptions in upper, it takes whatever's in the upper and makes it all uppercase. So that way, if they spelled it touchdown capital TOUCHDOWN, or if they did for whatever reasons capital TO and then lowercase the rest, I don't have to worry about that because now I know all the letters are going to be uppercase and my search is all in uppercase letters. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So now we basically have this flag that calls out, is it a touchdown or is it a field goal? And I'm going to say, okay, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag it to my size. And basically what happens is it makes the nulls the smallest, the field goals the next biggest, and then the touchdowns the largest. We can change the size a little bit. So these touchdowns are a little probably too big. And even the field goals are kind of hard to see. So what we can do is we can kind of right click on here and say edit sizes. And we have a range. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the upper end down a little bit. So that it makes our touchdowns a little bit smaller. So hopefully that's a little more reasonable to size. We've got our small field goals here, our big touchdowns here, a field goal up here. Does that make sense? People with me on the size? Any questions?
In the filter, what option do you select?
So on the filters, I just excluded all the kickoffs. So we went in the search, we typed kicks, and then we said exclude. So now that we have that, we're going to use that same trick as before. We're going to hold down control. We're going to take the touchdown field goal filter, and we're also going to apply it to the color. So now basically it's coloring all the field goals as red, as orange, all the touchdowns is red, and everything else is blue. You guys see that? So now both size and color are pre-attentive attributes. People's eyes are automatically drawn to bigger things. And then colors help people, kind of categorize information together. So it's pretty easy to see these big red bubbles all probably mean something similar. The middle orange bubbles also mean something. But what we want is we want to have two different dimensions on our color. Not only do we care if it's a touchdown or a field goal, but we also care about which team scored that touchdown or field goal. So to do that, we're going to take team, and we're going to drag that into our details. And basically what we're going to end up doing is we're going to create colors based on two dimensions. So when you have dimensions, which are these blue pills, you can assign multiple dimensions to a color field. If you just simply, and you don't have to do this, if I simply just drag color on here, it's going to replace it. So it changed it. Now it's only New England and Philly. The touchdown color went away. So I'm going to undo that. And what you can do is over here where it shows you right now, this little symbol, if you see what this little 3 dots on the bottom, 1 dot on the top matches this detail, because I brought it into detail. If we click on that, you can change what it belongs to. And we're actually going to change it so that it belongs to color. And what that does is now I've got 2 fields on color. So I've got my first field, which is it a touchdown or a field goal? And then my second field is it the Patriots or is it the Eagles? And you can see when we look out here now, we've got different options. So I can assign one color to the combination of field goal New England. I can assign another combination to a touchdown for New England. I can assign one for the field goal for the Eagles and one color for the touchdown for the Eagles. Does that make sense? Do you guys know about how to double up your color shelf like that? No? Okay, cool. If this is too easy, let me know. And if it's not, if you want me to go slower, let me know as well. So basically now we've got 2 graphs and we want to put them together, right? So the way we do that is we create a dual axis. So right now we have 2 separate axes, even though they're the same measure. And what we want to do is we want to move this axis up here so that they all line up on the same pane. And the way you can do that is just by simply right-clicking on the second one and clicking dual axis. So right-clicking on the bottom one, selecting dual axis, and it now moves it up. The other thing that's important is right now it's not that big of a deal because we have the exact same measure, but it's always just a good practice to build the habit of right-clicking and synchronizing your axis. If you had 2 different measures and the scales were different, it's automatically going to make your scales kind of go from your minimum value to your maximum value, but your minimum and maximum values could be very different. So you want to synchronize it so that the points line up appropriately. So just for aesthetic reasons, I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to size on the line. So I went back to my line. So again, we have two marks. Now these marks look a little different. So we've got a circle mark with the colors and the size. The line mark just has that description that we were looking at before. We're good with that gray color. We don't need our line to be colored, but it's a little too thick. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come to size. I'm going to pull it all the way down. It's pretty thin. I'll maybe turn it up a little bit. And now we've got our line graph kind of in the background. The other thing you may notice, it's really hard to see on here. I can see it on mine. You probably see on yours if you're following along that there's grid lines. So there's actually, vertical and horizontal lines, which are adding a lot of noise to the line graph itself. So if you wanted to get rid of that, you could come up to the top here and just say Format and Format Lines. So again, at the very top, there's your menu bar. You have the option to click Format, and then about a third of the way down, there's the Lines option. And in there, we can turn off the grid lines. So under Sheet, we have grid lines. We can turn those off, and it makes it a little bit cleaner of a dashboard. The other thing that I'm going to do is these axes really don't need to be duplicated. So I'm going to right-click on the second one, and I'm going to uncheck Show Header. So again, if you right-click on the far right axis, you have the option to unshow the header, basically hide the header. And then the path at the bottom doesn't really mean anything. It's not like a relevant football measure. It's just an index. So I'm going to right-click and I'm going to hide that as well. So now the final piece of cleanup we'll do on this sheet is formatting this axis a little bit. Since we're talking about win percentage, we can right-click and say Format here. And we're going to change the scale of the number to be a percentage. So again, I right-clicked on the left axis. I said Format. And under Scale, I'm changing the numbers to be a percent, and we don't need any decimal points. So now we have the scale, and that looks better. If you remember, I'm remembering now, I did put a horizontal line at 50% where you could basically make it very easy for your reader to see, are the Eagles more likely to win or lose? If we want to do that, that's just adding a reference line. Have you guys used reference lines before? Couple people. So if you add a reference line, we can say that we want this reference line to be for the entire table. It doesn't really matter because we're going to make it a constant reference line. So we're basically hard coding a value of 0.5 or 50%. So again, I went down to the drop down. I chose constant. And for value, I said 0.5. We don't really need the label. If you want the label, you can keep it, but I don't think we need it. And for the line formatting, I'm going to make it a little thinner. I don't think it needs to be that thick. And say OK. So now we've got that horizontal line that goes right across, and you can see basically when were the Eagles favored. So in the beginning, the Patriots were the favorite. Starting the game, the Patriots had Vegas's line in favor of Patriots. Then once the Eagles scored their first touchdown, they crossed over that line for the first time. So we're starting to tell the game. It dipped back down as the Patriots were driving because, again, Vegas thought the Patriots were the favorites. So once they saw them marching down the field, but then they settled for a field goal, right? They didn't get the touchdown, so the Eagles stayed the favorite. Eagles get another touchdown. They start to build this lead, and it keeps going until late in the fourth. The Patriots score a touchdown, and people are like, here comes Tom Brady, driving the Patriots down. But then the Eagles come back, they score. The Eagles get a strip sack and a field goal, and then we're almost at 100% certainty at that point. So that it kind of tells the story of the game, which is pretty neat to see. This one I find interesting too, just looking at the data. This was the Eagles after the Patriots scored. They got down to, it was third down. They threw a pass to Torrey Smith, but he didn't gain any yards. So now it was fourth down. They had a decision. Were they going to go for it on fourth down, or were they going to punt the ball? They decided to go for it. They completed. You see it jumps way up there. So that was really one of the biggest turning points of the game here is this decision right here between those two plays. All right, so we got to keep moving here. What time will we go to, 6:15? Okay. So now let's take a look back at the original. see how we're doing. So we've got this line graph built, and now we're going to really focus on the scoreboard. So one of the cool things about Tableau, and what I would really encourage you when you think about Tableau, is unleash your imagination, right? Like, don't try to think too much like Excel, where it has to all be cross tabs. Think about creative ways to display the data, because just about anything's possible if you can kind of dream it up. So you see, if you go on Tableau Public and you look at some of the galleries at the top and look at some of the visit data, you'll see some really crazy Tableau art, right? Like a beautiful art that people have built in Tableau, these spiral graphs and networks and all different things. And not to say that that should be your goal, but what I would encourage you is, try to think beyond what is immediately obvious that you can do with your data and come up with different engaging creative ways. So for me, I was looking at this and I wanted to give context to the line graph of what was happening. I was like, well, a scoreboard is something that, people familiar with sports will be used to reading. They'll be able to read a scoreboard. And you're going to see now, to build this scoreboard here, it's really pretty simple to do in Tableau. It takes a little bit of formatting, and we'll go through that. But basically everything here are just worksheets that are text boxes, and then we put them all together. So let's go through some of that now, and then we'll go build our dashboard. So, people doing all right? Good?
Yes.
Questions? No? All right, so I'm going to move to the next tab called Clock, and we're just going to build the clock. You guys are going to see this gets a little repetitive, but hopefully by the time we've done it a couple times, you really are comfortable with what we're doing. So I know the data here. I know this play is equal to my time. So all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to drag play to text. And basically you can see all the different times on the clock that were available at some point. Some data point has that time. For the sake of what I'm doing, I'm just going to come in here to path, and I'm going to drag path to filters. And I'm just going to pick a random path. It doesn't really matter. I'll pick 9. You guys can pick whatever. It doesn't matter. But it just filters it down to one play, right? So now whatever happened at possession number 9 is what we're showing. And there was 11 minutes and 7 seconds probably left in the first quarter. It was probably just getting started. But like I said, we're going to build a bunch of text boxes to build this sheet. So under my text, we're going to do some text formatting. And I'm going to say under alignment, I want to show this in the center of my dashboard and in the middle of my dashboard. So it says middle center. Cool. And then when you come up to standard here, I'm going to say make it fit the entire view, which will now put this clock right in the middle of my dashboard. And now the next thing, and I don't really know what the right answer is, but we're just going to pick a random size. I'm going to say 28. So again, I went to text and I clicked on the 3 little dots next to play to edit my text. And I'm going to make it bold. So I went from Tableau Book to Tableau Bold. You've got a whole bunch of different fonts here. I would say 95 to 99% of the time, both at work and at home, I'm using a Tableau font. So either Tableau Book or Tableau Bold, Tableau Light. A, because they render well on Tableau server, but B, they're just nice clean fonts and they're not all curly and dramatic. So I'm going to say, okay, are people with me here? They made their font bold if they want it. They sized it up. Like I said, I don't know the exact size, but basically we can kind of see we're starting to get a clock for our scoreboard. So we're building pieces of our scoreboard. We're going to put it all together. So we need to do some line formatting again, because on the scoreboard, and I'll tell you what I did. I came here. I'm not this creative. I couldn't do it all on my own. I went to NFL scoreboard or football scoreboard. I forget what I did. Yeah, and I found this scoreboard, right? So it says home. It's at the time, visitors. It has who has the ball. It has turnovers, which I didn't have. So I just had quarter, or timeouts left, sorry. I just had quarter. And then what down was it, where the ball was, and whatnot. So this was my inspiration for this, right? Like, it looks pretty similar. So you can find inspiration anywhere. You just Google for inspiration. It's not that hard. But this is what we're going for. And right now we have our clock, but we need this border around it. So going back to Tableau, I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say format lines. And then I want to put basically dividers around this. So if I come into my pane and I say put a line for the rows, you can see it drew those lines at the top and the bottom. They're a little bit faint for you guys, but hopefully on your computer it looks better. I'll make them dark here. Can we see them better now?
Yep.
You don't need them this dark, but hopefully they show up a little better on the monitor. Same thing, I'm going to come here, I'm going to choose line. I'll still make mine dark. I wouldn't recommend making it this dark, but just so we can see it on the screen. Good? Good.
Yes.
Where did you get the line from?
So we went up to format here, we went to borders, and then we added, probably would just click this normal skinny one, but just so it shows up, I did a thicker one. Okay, so now we've got our clock box ready to go. Next, we're going to do our score. So in our raw data, we had the score of both the Eagles and the Patriots, and we want to have the scoreboard on either side. So we need to make 2 sheets, one for the Eagles and one for the Patriots. People ready to move on? Yeah, nods. Okay. So I moved to the next worksheet, and I went to Eagles score. And all I'm going to do, very similar, is I'm going to take the Philly score, I'm going to drag that to text. So I have a big number. Again, if you want to make it so it makes a little more sense, you can put a filter on path. So the Eagles had 0 points in the very beginning of the game. That makes sense. I'm going to come to entire view. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make it centered, and I'm going to make it always in the middle just in case it starts to move on me. And then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make the font. So I think last time I did 28. I want the scores to be a little smaller, so I'm doing 22. I'm not going to make the scores bold, but maybe I'll change my mind. Since this is the Eagles, and I know I always want my Eagles to be green, I'm just going to pick a green. And that's my Eagles score. The next thing that we did was we also had a little football logo to answer the question, did the Eagles have the ball or did the Patriots have the ball? So I have a calculated field up here called Eagles ball. I'm going to open that up so we can talk about it. So one of the neat things about Tableau that I think flies under the radar a little bit is the fact that you can use Unicode shapes and symbols. So I was talking to Rob about this before we started. So not only can you use Unicode, which a lot of times are like the up arrows and the down arrows or just a black dot or something like that, but there's a lot of like emoji type characters that you can use to kind of add fun to your dashboard. And I'll plug here, one of the guys that actually works up in New York for Spotify does a lot on Tableau Public that I recommend checking out around emoji analysis. So he'll look at like what emojis are used in people's public playlists and what artists are in those playlists. So you can see like a lot of times if it's a country singer, there's the country boot emoji, or like Snoop Dogg has like a high correlation to the cigarette emoji. So like fun things like that. But you can actually visualize it in Tableau because Tableau can handle the emojis and the Unicode shapes. So with that all being said, we're going to use a football emoji or Unicode shape to appear on our scoreboard on whatever side of the score has the ball, basically as a possession arrow. So what we're saying is if the team equals to the Eagles, to Philly, then show the ball, because that means any line that the team says Philly, like we talked about in the beginning, means it's their ball, it's their possession. Otherwise, null, don't show anything. Don't show spaces, don't show anything, just end it there. So that's for the Eagles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it to text. So that at this point at path 9, it was the Eagles ball, so that's showing up. But I need to do a little bit of formatting. I actually want that ball to sit, instead of on a separate line below it, I want it to sit right next to the score. So I'm just going to delete and bring that up, put a space. I don't want the ball to be as big as the score. It's just supposed to be a little call out. So I'm going to make it smaller. And I don't want it to be green. I want the ball always to be black. We'll see. So now we've got the score, and then right next to it, it shows the Eagles have 0 points, but they have the ball. Right? Make sense? So then what we have is we have the exact same calculation over here called Patriots ball, but it says if the team equals New England, right? So now we have two separate calculations. The reason being, if it's the Eagles ball, we want the ball to show up. If it's the Patriots ball, we want nothing to show up. Same thing for the Patriots. If it's the Patriots ball, we want the ball to show up. Otherwise, nothing. And that way there won't be any spaces or anything that's kind of creating wonky formatting. So what we're going to do now is we're simply just going to right-click on this Eagles score. And wonky, you like that? It wouldn't be it wouldn't be a presentation if I wasn't getting heckled by Dr. Campbell. Right-click on this and say duplicate, right? So we're going to basically create a copy of it, and we're going to switch out the Philly attributes for the New England attributes so that we have that mirror image. And it's pretty easy to do. Our formatting can stay the same. Right-click on the tab. So that,
It doesn't have the score at the bottom.
Good question. You're right. All right, let's undo that. We're not ready to duplicate. We want to put a box around this. Good call, Dr. Campbell. Well, no, that was for the clock.
Oh.
So we're going to come in here. We're going to format the borders, and we're going to put our borders back on here. And again, just for the sake of people being able to see it, I'll make it darker. Questions? No? Good? All right. So what I'm going to do is now we'll right-click and we'll duplicate this. So we've got the Eagles score. And if you want to switch out dimensions or measures, but you don't want to lose all that formatting, it's pretty neat. You can just drag it right on top of it. So we used Philly score before. If we just take New England score and drag it directly on top of it, it's going to show the New England score now. It didn't. This probably wasn't the best example because it's a 0-0 game, but you'll see later on it's showing. We will go in and change the color, but first we're going to drag the Patriots ball. So if this worked correctly, the Patriots ball should not show up because the Eagles have the ball at the same time. So if I drag this on here and replace it, the ball goes away. And then because we don't have any extra spaces, you saw that 0 slid over a little bit. It stayed center, which is what we were looking for it to do. And then we're going to go into text. So clicking on text, clicking on those dots again, we're just going to change this Patriots score to blue. So now we've got the Patriots score. I do. So I'll come down here and I'll just say Pat's score. Doesn't really matter, but it's good practice. All right? People with me? So it's pretty easy to duplicate and swap those guys out. And now we have our two sides of the scoreboard for score. For quarter, we're going to come in here and we're going to just bring in, again, first thing I'll do is I'll just assign that same 9. I just pick 9 randomly. Doesn't really matter, you can pick whatever. But that'll now limit it to 1 play. So basically when I take quarter, I put quarter in here, now I only have 1. So it says it's Q1. This says Q1, but actually when I was looking at the scoreboard and whatnot, it's probably I'm going to put the quarter outside of the box and then just the value inside the box. Does anyone know how we can do this? How we can get it instead of saying Q1 just to say 1?
No.
Any ideas?
No.
Alias. Very good. So what we can do is we can right-click on the dimension and we'll set the alias to work for the entire dashboard. So we'll right-click on the quarter here and we will go to aliases and we're going to change these. So instead of saying Q1, we just want to say 1 for Q2, 2, 3, and 4. So basically, every time that it's in a view, it's going to show the alias instead of the member. Does that make sense? You guys with me? So we right-clicked on quarter, it shows aliases, and then we changed it to 1 to 4. Very cool. All right, so now we're going to come into borders again. I probably could have thrown you guys a bone and set up some of these borders for you guys. But by the end of this, hopefully everyone knows how to set borders, if nothing else. All right, so we've got borders. I'm going to come here. I'm going to make an entire view. And then I'm going to center my view. I'm going to put it in the middle. And I'm going to scale up my font. Again, I don't really know. I'm just picking random sizes, maybe 18. All right, so that's my quarter 1. Now a more difficult question. Does anyone know how I can get it to say QTR like we have here, this QTR outside of the box?
It was same way we put in the football in the previous one, because the same kind of project.
So good idea, but if we put the QTR in there, it actually would come inside the box because it's a label. Very good. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a header, and we're going to create like a dummy header. So one thing that you can do in Tableau is you can create inline calculations. So just by double clicking up here on rows, it'll start to give me a little flashy cursor, meaning I can type something, right? So I'm just going to put open quotation to start a string, and I'm just going to type QTR and then close quote. And it's basically creating a dummy header that says quarter. And then when I say enter, I've now got quarter here. I basically don't want to say, I don't want the field label there. I don't want it to tell me what the name of the field is. So I'm going to hide that, hide the field label. And then I actually don't want these dividers to come into my header. So I'm going to turn it off here. So now basically I have quarter outside of the box. Does that make sense? Yeah. So now I can right click on this header and I can format it and I can make it the same size. So I did 18 before, I'll do 18 again. So there's my quarter label now. And that's going to be the middle part of that dashboard.
It just seems so big.
Well, we'll see. We'll get it on the dashboard. I don't have this other graph. We're just building these two. So I figured it's going to take up a little more space. So now we kind of have,
It just seems so big up here.
oh, well, so it's because I have an entire view. If I say standard, it'll look like that. Yeah, but the entire view will give me more control then. So now we're going to use this template here for quarter for also for our down and distance and the ball on whatever yard line it was on. So if we right click on quarter and say duplicate, so this is why I didn't set it up for you, because you're doing it for yourself, Rob. It's good. So what do we have next? Down, right? So if I come here, I can come up to this quarter here and just change this to down. And in this example, it's cut off a little bit, so I'm actually going to come here in between my header and my actual view. I'm going to drag this out so I can see down. Does that make sense? And then I have to pick one of these. I forget which split it is, so let's just try the first one. And I'm going to, again, just drag this on top of quarter. There you go. So that's good. So I'll second down. You guys don't have to do this, but just to give you the background, our data looks like this, where it's first down and how many yards. So I told Tableau to split it on the word and. So we have two fields. One is what down is it, first, second, third, fourth. And then the second field is how many yards to go. Yeah, it's based on a delimiter. All right, so we're going to get rid of that. And you can do that just by right-clicking and transforming. You can split, and Tableau will split it for you, or you can do a custom split, and you can call out the, yeah, exactly. All right, so back where we were, this one's called down. Now we're flying. We're going to come here again. We're going to duplicate it another time, and we're going to call this to go. How many yards do we have to go? And I'm going to replace down with that second. And so second down with 3 yards to go. Does that make sense? I'm going to call this to go. And then we'll do it one more time. I'm going to call this ball on. So where is the ball on the field? I'm going to drag it out again. The ball is on. We'll use the ball on field. The ball's on New England's 31. All right. Does that make sense? Cool. Very good. All right. So now we can build our scoreboard, which is the exciting part. And we're doing well on time, so we'll take it slow. So I'm going to create a dashboard. That's this 4 little square with the 4 quadrants in it, bottom right, new dashboard. I'm going to shrink my width a little bit. I'm going to make it a 600 by 600. It looks like, I think that fits in one view, so you guys should be able to see everything I'm doing. Whatever you guys want, but let's try 600 by 600 so that we can all be working in the same frame. How many people have used dashboard containers before? So either the vertical or horizontal container. Just a handful of people. So one of the neat things with dashboard containers is you get a lot of control around like height and width of your different sheets. So you can really control. So if you have a vertical container, basically you can put a container down first and then you can put multiple sheets in a container. So in a vertical container, they stack on top of each other vertically and you can fix the height of your sheet. So you can say, I want this to be stuck at 100 pixels no matter what else goes below it. With a horizontal container, you stack things horizontally and you can fix the width. So I want this to be 100 pixels wide. Even if I put 3 more sheets in, they have to split up the rest of the space, but this is always 100 pixels wide. So we're going to start with a vertical container. I'm just going to drag that onto my dashboard. Containers always have a blue outline. So that's our vertical container. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the win probability graph and I'm going to drag that inside of my container. For now, I don't really care about these legends. If we have time, we'll go back and do legends. But I'm going to say delete this legends out here. So we're just left with this. And again, for this, well, we'll leave this title here. We'll try to give it a nicer title. But now we're in our container. And then the next thing we're going to do, just for now, we'll put a blank sheet in. So I'm going to put a blank sheet in here, and I'm going to kind of look at it. And honestly, that looks pretty good. But what I'm trying to figure out myself is how much space do I want to give the scoreboard versus the graph, right? Since this is a little different than the original. And that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to fix the height. You also could come here, and you could say edit height. So it's at 348. The OCD in me would probably change this to like 350. Just being very particular. But so we've got this fixed at 350 now. And basically, like I said, if I drag in another sheet into the container, it's going to cut these guys down in size, but it won't impact my 350 because that height is fixed, right? So if I do it, so if you can come down here on the side, you can say fixed height or edit height. When you edit the height, once you hit OK, that becomes your fixed height. So again, no matter how many sheets I throw in here, you'll see they keep dividing up, but it's not impacting my fixed height. All right, so don't do that. We'll leave one in here because we'll see how much space we need for the container. So let's take a look at what we're trying to do because it's always good to have an idea. So when I look at this, I see basically thirds, right? So I'm looking at a vertical container with 3 thirds. So one horizontal container that's split 1, 2, 3, another horizontal container that's split, and then a final horizontal container that's split into 3, right? So inside my vertical container, I'm going to put 3 horizontal containers. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? Yeah? Okay. So let's do the first one. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to put in a horizontal container. So now I've got this blue horizontal container. The first thing I'm actually going to put in the horizontal container is a text box for that Eagles name. So I'm going to drop a text box in, and in all caps, I typed Eagles. I'm going to make it green. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make it big. All right? You guys with me on that? Text box Eagles. Cool. So that's my first one. Now, if you ever double click on something, so from a formatting perspective, again, these are the little things, if you can pick them up, it can make you faster at Tableau. So when you see gray around the outside, you mean you're clicked on a worksheet. So or a text box or something like that, like a single element. If you double click on it, it'll take you to the layout container. So now that's that horizontal container. If I double click on that, it's going to tell me that horizontal container is in a bigger vertical container. So I want to add to this middle horizontal container. And what I'm going to add is I'm going to add a second text box. So I'm going to click on text, and I'm going to drag it. And again, when I get over it, you can see that blue lights up. So now I know I'm dropping it in a horizontal container. So I'm going to drop it in there, and I'm going to call this one Patriots. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it blue. I'm going to make it bold. Make it 18. So now I've got my two things in here, Eagles and Patriots, right? And then the last thing is the clock that's going to go in the middle. So that's actually a worksheet. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to clock, and I'm going to drag it right in between. And when I drag it in between, again, the blue lights up, so I know I'm in that container where I want to be. So I drop that in there. And now we have to fix the width. So right now, this is only taking up a very narrow amount of space, so you can't even see the clock. We need to tell it to be wider. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say edit width, and I'm going to say 150. I'm just guessing. And that looks pretty good, actually. So basically, I'm going to hide the title, right-click, hide title. And now I have a pretty decent width on my clock. All my digits fit. All of my labels fit. Well, what's the problem here? It's squeezed, right? So how can I fix this? Change the height by doing what?
You can drag the line.
I can drag it, but what if I want to be more precise?
And you can draw a triangle.
Yeah.
And then fix it.
Fix the height. Great. So if I come in here, I double clicked, I got to this container, and I want to be very precise about it, I can say edit the height. And I'm at 30 right now. I need to at least double it. I'm going to go to 75 and say okay. So now I've got space for my clock, right? It's starting, I think it's starting to shape up already. Now, what I actually want to do is I want to format these text boxes to drop to the bottom. I want them to be lined up at the bottom so I can put the logos above it. So by right-clicking on here and formatting my text object, I'm going to align the vertical to the bottom. Got it? Align my vertical to the bottom. Okay? So now I've got space. Again, with the final thought being that we're going to put in these logos, I've got space at the bottom to put in the logos. Does that make sense? So now we've kind of got our first couple pieces set. Our line graph's in there, the height's fixed. Our clock's in there, the clock height is fixed. So the next thing we ought to do is put in our next row. So our next row has the score, the quarter, and the other team's score. Make sense? All right. So we're going to, again, start with a horizontal container. We're going to drop it below. And then we're going to start on the left. We've got our Eagles, right? So I'm going to come in. I'm going to take Eagles score and bring it into the container. I'm going to hide the title, and I'm going to double click on the sheet to fix the height. Or Tabasco's suggestion, let's try the other way. We can just drag it, right? So if I come down here and just drag this down to about there, now I've got a height for my score. Does that make sense? So now we've got our Eagles score. We also need the quarter. So I'm going to take the quarter and I'm going to drag it in to the far right because I want it to be on the right side of the Eagles score and drop that. Again, if I hide the title, I have my quarter. And then I'm going to bring in the Patriots score. And I'm going to hide that. Now what I want to do is I want to actually slide this over a little bit. If you slide it, so I'll admit I'm not the best, or I don't have all the answers. If you slide this over, it's going to break our container. You can see it breaking right there. So then the question is, do we want to break the container, or do we want to just keep it close and keep it in the container? We'll just keep it close for now, and we'll leave it like that. So we'll come back. We have a little bit of formatting left to do here, but let's keep moving and get everything on the page, and then we can do our final round of formatting. So we've got our Eagle score, we've got the quarter, We've got the Patriots score. Eagles have the ball. We're doing all right. So the final one is we're going to bring in our last horizontal container. So we actually lost here. Let me double check. So this height isn't fixed. I want to double click and I want to fix it. So now when I bring in my horizontal container, it keeps the space. And we don't need this blank sheet anymore, so we can get rid of that. And then the final ones, I forget the order. I think we're going to go down to go ball on. Okay. So we'll bring in, what down is it? Second down. We're going to bring in to go. And we're going to bring in ball on, which I didn't name. It's sloppy of me. All right. So time is flying, and we're moving right along. So I'm going to forego some of this formatting because it doesn't look terrible. And I'm going to show you the couple final tricks. So the first thing that we can do is we can actually float a text box to get a final big border around it. So what I'm going to do is hold down Shift and drag text box out. And what that does is it puts a floating text box up in this corner. I'm going to take this text box and I'm going to move it across the entire scoreboard like that. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to format my text box, drop down arrow. And what am I doing wrong here? Where are my borders? Yeah, no, they changed on me. I'm still used to. So my excuse is that at work we still are on 10.1, and my instincts go that way. But in the newer versions of Tableau, you've got layout up here, and now at the layout, you've got border and background in here. So while clicked on the text box, if I go to layout, I've got border. I can come here and I can put a thick border on it. Again, it probably doesn't need to be that thick, but for the purposes of seeing it on the projector, we'll do it like that. So now we've got something that kind of looks like a scoreboard. How are you guys doing? Does it kind of look like this? Yeah, cool. So the final thing that I want to do is I want to come up here to dashboard. This is an important one. So you guys let me know when you're ready. We good? Yeah, cool. All right. So we're going to put an action on. And what the action does is it gives that interactivity to the dashboard. And I'm going to put add an action, a filter action, and basically I want to say when I hover over, so you've got different options, select, go into a menu, or hover. When I hover over the line graph, I want to filter everything but the line graph. And when I move off of that, I want to leave it. So it's not changing constantly. I want to leave the filter as it is. And the only thing I want to filter, I don't care about the team, I don't care about anything else, I just want to filter on that path. Because each point is a path, which is a record of data. And all of the components of our scoreboard relate to one record of data. So if I passed the filter for team, and I hovered over an Eagles point, all the Patriots data would go away, because it's not that team. But by filtering for just path, it gives me all the records for that one path. Does that make sense? So again, just selecting win probability line on hover, leave the filter to filter everything except for the line for the path of the line. And then what happens is when I hover over here, my scoreboard is changing. So there's a scoreboard. There's a different time on the scorer. There's a different time. There's a different time. So this isn't the full dashboard that's on public. The other thing that we did that you could easily do is you can put the description on. So I'll do it just so that it's on the recording. But basically by putting the description in here and bringing, what? No, just put the description in, and then when I bring it in here, the reason we were filtering path before was just so it made more sense when we were developing, but that action filter is going to override that filter. So if I put this down here or wherever I can fit it.
Right.
To the right would fit nicely in this case, actually, you're right. Oh, the reason that I was having a problem is because of this floating text box was covering my container. So let me move that. Let me put this somewhere. Let me hide the title and fit the view. And now that description is showing up. So again, when you hover over, the description will change. So there's that touchdown to Ertz at the end of the game. Again, there's work to be done. We're almost out of time. But you could clean up your tooltips or even turn off your tooltips because basically everything in your tooltips are being shown down below. And then we didn't get a chance to, but with Tableau, you can easily load in images. So what I would have done is I would have floated in a couple images of the Eagles and Patriots logo, and that would get you pretty darn close to that scoreboard. It might even be a little nicer because it's nice and big. It's a little wider. But yeah, that's what I wanted to cover today. Hopefully, so let's take a second and recap, and then you guys can answer any questions. So for the top one here, we talked about dual axes, right? So we started with the two separate ones, then we dual axes and synchronized the axes. We also looked at size and color, different options. So we sized the bubbles based on those contains functions. So contains in Tableau lets you look, is there a touchdown or is there a field goal? We also then colored, we used a dual dimension color. So we colored not only based on was it a touchdown or a field goal or anything else, but also was it the Eagles scoring or the Patriots scoring. And then on the bottom half, we did a lot of text formatting, right? So again, it's nothing too complex. And as Anuj pointed out, for these labels here, a little bit of a trick. We created those dummy labels. And then we just used the lines and the borders to create the borders around here. And then again, to put it all together, we talked about containers and fixing widths and fixing heights so that we could space things out and that it would appear pretty nice and neat on the dashboard. And then to wrap it all up and make them work together, we use the dashboard action. And you have different options. You can make it so it only changed when you clicked on a dot. But since I wanted you to be able to run your mouse over and see things happen live, we made it on the hover. And we told it to leave the filter. So like right now, when I'm off of a point, it shows you the most recent point that you were on. So hopefully you guys learned a trick or two. I think we covered a lot. Hopefully I didn't go too fast, but Dr. Campbell does have a recording. But are there any questions right now on this or in general? I guess my plea that I always make when I have a chance to talk, and especially to a group of students, would be to get involved, to experiment different design techniques, go on Tableau Public or Twitter, see what other people are doing. But really for me, the biggest thing is sharing your work and getting feedback. So if you don't have a Tableau Public profile already, so obviously the one that we've been looking at resides on my Tableau Public profile. I just realized earlier today when I was looking over, making sure everything was there, I hit 100 visits on Tableau Public. So there's quite a few for you guys to look at and choose from. But one of the neat things about Tableau Public is you can download other people's work so you can see how they build it and kind of reverse engineer it. So if you wanted to look at that top 5, bottom 5 graph, you can easily take a look at how I built that. But sharing your work, Rob shares his all the time. Your classmates, Anuj and John and Steven as well.
What's the hashtag?
Share it on Twitter or LinkedIn. These guys have done a nice job coming up with a hashtag VizTalks so that you can search it and see some of the work your classmates are doing. But feel free to shoot me an email if you want feedback on a dashboard you're working on. I'm always happy to review dashboards. Just be patient with me and I will get back to you. But feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Any questions right now?
So I noticed that we had a lot of cognitive fields already pre-entered.
Yeah.
So what's that process like? Because I had to figure out this was negatively affecting the graphs and I'm gonna fix it.
Yep, good question. So I did that just to save time for now. But yeah, most of my exploration is just visually looking at it. So just getting in there, looking at the data, seeing what seems wrong. And then it's always logical, or usually should be always logical. So figuring out what's, I realized when it's the Patriots ball, it's showing the Patriots win probability. Eagles, it's Eagles. So I knew I had to invert it. And then it's a lot like Excel. It's just function based. So it's if, then, this, or, and, or continuing to add additional loops. So figuring out the logic and then writing it in. And it just takes practice. It's nothing. But I would just look at it. If something's jumping out, try to figure out why it's jumping out, and then taking a step back and say, what logic can I apply to fix this?
Mm-hmm.
And now, hopefully, you guys all have this Eagles data set. So that was really why we did this, is because I want as many people as possible to create Eagles dashboards and share them with me. So hopefully you guys, find the data interesting and create some cool Superbowl dashboards and share them out with your classmates. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming and having me. It's awesome how big this group is growing.
See if there's any questions from the. Yeah. Did you guys have any questions here? If so, just type them in.
Our next meeting is on 19th March.
Yes, our next meeting is on the 19th of March.
19th of March. Okay. Certainly try to make that one as well.
You're good, Annalisa? All right. Have a good night.
Yes.